Admit all.
Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah, we're going to be starting in a couple of minutes at 6:03. Thanks so much for joining us. We have our special author today. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to type them in at the chat at any time. We'll ask them out loud later on.
And before we even start our interview, we like to do this little fun thing and we ask our audience, where are you watching us from? So where are you tuning in today? You can write your location in the chat and we can get started. Okay.
So I see Jersey, Bronx, Connecticut, Los Angeles, Rockaway Beach. We're actually getting a good amount of people already, so this is impressive.
Yeah. I think my video is frozen. I'm so sorry. Are you hearing me, Casper?
Yeah, so I
Okay.
can hear you, Simone, but that's true. I don't see you in the video feed.
Yeah, I think my video is frozen. That's fine.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Oh, there am I.
yes,
Hi.
we can see you. Central New York. Nice.
You have a big audience today, so that's so much.
Yeah.
This is going to be a fun interview.
Yeah, they're just
I don't think we're going to get
going
to
in.
ask questions.
Leave as much time as we can.
Yes.
You already have like 35 people and they're still coming in, like, very nice.
Yes. So when it's like this, we let the audience ask the questions. We may get a question here and there.
Okay.
Okay, guys, so we have 1 more minute to start and then we'll get into our exciting interview. Or do you want to start now, Casper? It's just 6:02.
Maybe let's wait till 6:03.
Let's see.
Yeah, there's still some people coming in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 6:03.
Yay! Well, today we have, and first of all, good night and good evening, everyone. Today we have an exciting program for you. We're looking so forward to start. But first, before we get into the fun stuff, I just have a few announcements. First of all, my name is Simone Wellington. I am the specialist for Far Rockaway and the co-host for our Literary Thursday. But like I said, before we get into the fun stuff, let's get into the announcements. So join us in December for Queen's Public Library's annual It's Time for Kind celebration. This year's theme, Be Kind to Your Mind, is a call to practice self-care. Enjoy our special programs, explore our recommended books, pick up a self-care activity journal at your local library, and much more. Visit queenslib.org/ITFK2025 to learn more. QPL wishes you and your loved ones a very happy holiday. Throughout the season, we'll be offering you a joyful and vibrant selection of all ages books, movies, music, crafts, concerts, programs, and more. Visit queenslibrary.org to get all the details about holiday fun at the library. Help feed your fellow New Yorkers in need. Queens Public Library, in partnership with City Harvest, will be collecting canned goods at all QPL locations starting December 8th. Visit queenslibrary.org to learn more about our winter food drive. Libraries are for everyone. Thanks to our generous supporters, QPL remains a place to learn, grow, and belong. Now, through December now through December 31st, your gift to Queens Public Library Foundation will have double the impact for our vital programs and services, thanks to our matching gift challenge. You can learn more and donate today at qplf.org/match25. And now I'll pass you over to Casper. Take it away, Casper.
All right, thank you so much, Simone, for the nice announcements. I'm so happy to be here. We actually have 45 people in the audience, so it's a lot of people. And somebody wrote in the chat that they're on a ship in the Tasmanian Sea. So that's pretty impressive. That's impressive. Because I was on a cruise and I know getting like internet on a cruise is hard. So that's really nice that they did that. And I did post some of the links in the chat if you need a reminder. And of course, I'm so happy to be here with all of you today. We have special author Kate McKeon, who is a literary agent at the Howard Morheim Literary Agency in Brooklyn, New York. She is also an adjunct professor at New York University and earned her MA in fiction writing at the University of Southern Mississippi. Her work has appeared in Poets and Writers, Electric Literature, Catapult, and more. She also writes the Agent and Books newsletter at katemckeon.substack.com. I'll put that in the chat. So thank you so much for joining us, Kate. We're so excited to have you. And obviously, I'm not the only one because there's so many people joining us today. So we look forward about hearing from your new book. And everybody, we're also excited to have your questions. So you can feel free to put them in the chat at any time. Thank you.
Great. I'm so happy to be here. I actually updated my newsletter. I am now at agentsandbooks.com. So I put that in the chat too, but I'm super happy to be here. I am a Queens Library patron, and I encourage you all, if you don't already have your library card, to get them. You can actually get them in every borough. Did you know that? But I live in Brooklyn, and I would love to tell you today about my book, Right Through It. Gosh, can I remember my own subtitle? An Insider's Guide to Publishing and the Creative Life. And I had an interesting journey to getting this book published, which I want to tell you all about. But first, a little bit about the book. I want to tell you a little bit about the book, and I'm going to read a couple pages, tell you about the journey, and then we're going to answer as many questions as you have, because I know that that's one of the biggest draws to getting a little FaceTime with a literary agent, and I love answering questions. So I'm here for it. So I've been a literary agent for almost 20 years, and I have always been a writer as well. And I mean, I've wanted to publish a book since I was 8 years old. And I didn't think it would take me this long, but in my journey to getting to this book, I had to write a lot of other books that didn't sell, which I'll tell you about. But what I distilled in this book is both the how-to, the how to write a query letter, like how to find an agent, all of that stuff is in there. What does it mean when an agent takes your book out on submission? What does the contract look like? What does an editor do? How does that editor buy your book? All of these things are in there, including a bunch of sample query letters. They are ones I've written because I wasn't going to take people's real query letters. And also a full book proposal. So the book proposal I wrote for this book is in the back of the book too. So if you're writing nonfiction, you'll have an example of what a book proposal looks like. They can vary a little bit, but these are all the little parts that you would want to achieve. But the other thing that makes this book different than all the other books on how to get a book deal and how to write a book is that I focus a lot on the feelings of this hard and long process of writing and publishing a book. Because I find that that's the most common question I get from my clients. When I'm talking to my client about a book we're about to send out, they go, is it normal that I'm so nervous? Or, when an author's about to turn her book into a publisher, she's like, I hate it. Is it normal that I hate my book right now? And I find that, yes, it is very normal to hate your book right when you're done with it because you've read it 500 times and you don't want to read it again. I have found a lot of the same kind of paths of feelings that come through the publishing and writing process. And I had the same ones, even as a person who's supposed to know everything about publishing. So let me read a couple pages from the book. And then I'll talk a little bit of how I got here, and then we'll take your questions. So, glasses. All right. This is from the end of the book, from chapter 10. It's called Failure is the Best Way to Learn. It is always my impulse to start with the worst case scenario. When you're prepared for that, you can handle anything, or at least the bad things that come your way. There's this other thing, though, that can happen. It's called success. And it too can happen to you. What is success? It can be whatever you want. It could be finishing your first draft. It could be getting a 6-figure deal. It could be writing 10 books and seeing your first one still in print 10 years later. You'll have various amounts of control over these things, but it's okay to define your own goals, big or small. The truth of the matter is that most books don't work. No writer sells every single book they write forever and ever. Everyone's got a manuscript in the drawer, even when your book is published. Very few books hit the bestseller lists, get a ton of attention, or make it into the celebrity book clubs. This is normal and fine and true for everyone. Your book does not have to sell a certain number of copies to be a success. It can be a success because it exists at all. If you do find success, it's important to enjoy it. Eisner Award-winning author and illustrator of The Magic Fish, Trung Le Nguyen, says that he'd tell his past self to figure out how to chill and enjoy success if he could. He said success feels amazing while somehow also feeling a little like the moment right as a Looney Tunes character looks down and realizes they've run out of solid road under their feet and will shortly plummet toward a canyon floor. New York Times bestselling author of more than 20 novels, Madeline Rue, said that success to me is finding satisfaction and meaning in the work. I know that's easy for her to say after getting so many book deals and hitting the list. But really, once you reach that goal, you have to find other things to strive for. Rue explains that there are so many factors that are out of your control in the publishing world, but I can absolutely control how much effort I'm putting into each book and how much I care about developing as an artist. However and whenever you succeed in your writing, celebrate it. But remember that each of those successes doesn't have to come with a deal announcement. If you aren't celebrating yet, don't worry. There is not a writer alive who has succeeded at every aspect of their writing life. Most writers do not sell the first book they write, or even the first book they try to sell. That project may have failed in the sense that it didn't cross the publishing finish line, but that alone does not make it a failure. You learn something with every sentence you write. You gain something from every project you try to launch. You will carry with you the lessons every book teaches you, regardless of whether it hits the shelves. I know this is cold comfort for the fresh sting of rejection. It isn't going to make anything feel better immediately, but like all hard-won life experiences, in a little while, you'll be able to see the gifts of this rejection, and the last one, and the one before that, and you'll think, God, I was so lost back then. Now I see. I'll stop there. So let's see. I, as I said, always wanted to be a writer, and I sent out a query letter about 8 years ago to a couple agents because I had written a picture book. And that picture book actually comes out May 5th from Sourcebooks. It's called Pay Attention to Me. But that was the first book I tried to write and tried to write it to get an agent for, because as a literary agent, I also have a literary agent because I do not want to call up editors and say, hi, I wrote the best book. Will you give me money for it? Because that feels weird. And I need an agent to answer all the same questions I have, even if I know the answer. I need someone to tell me to stop worrying about something I can't control. So we sent that book out. My agent is Michael Barrett at Distel Goderich and Brett, and he is a fantastic agent. And that book didn't sell when we sent it out. And then I wrote another picture book, and that didn't sell. And then I wrote a middle grade novel, and that didn't sell. And then I wrote an adult novel, and that didn't sell. And in between the last middle grade book and my adult novel that didn't sell, I started writing on my newsletter at agentsandbooks.com. And I wanted to share information like I do in the book. I wanted to tell people what I think query letters should be, or what can help demystify a query letter, and all the things about agents that are just hard to get. It's hard. The information is hard to find. And so I wanted to put it all in one place. And so I started talking about this, and I definitely in the back of my mind thought maybe one day this could be a book, because I have, as an agent, represented many books. Some of them are here, that were blogs and Twitter feeds and Tumblrs and all kinds of different Instagram feeds and all that stuff, that became books. And so it was in the back of my mind, I won't lie, but I didn't think, oh, I'm just going to print out all these newsletter posts and have them printed up in a book. I had to think of that angle that was different, and what made my book different and necessary in the sea of all the books that are similar to mine. And it was that talking about feelings that really resonated with my audience, with people like you, who are like, I want someone to say, yes, it is normal if you don't sell your book. Yes, it's normal if you don't get a starred review. Yes, it's normal if you don't hit the New York Times bestseller list. Like, most people don't get those things, and that is fine. And so that is when I was like, okay, that's what I want to write about. And that's why I think this book worked in a way that my other books didn't. It was that it was a direct conversation with the reader. I had this thing I wanted to give the reader, and it says, I think you need this. This is something that I think I can point to the people who would want it. And that, I think, made the book easier for you as a person strolling the shelves to say, oh, I have a question. That book is going to answer it. And now that's easier for nonfiction, but I think it can work the same way in fiction. And I'm going to write another book. That's my plan. And I am it'll hopefully be a novel. I mean, it'll be a novel, but hopefully I'll finish it. And I'm thinking about, what is that reader out there that is walking down the aisle in the historical fiction section? What do they want? And it's not in a way of like, oh, everybody likes a book about World War II, so I'll write a book about World War II. It's, what do I want as a reader when I pick a book? And how can I make that into this tangible thing that interests me as a writer as well? And communicating that little conversation with the reader, I think, is the most important thing about any book. And if your book is, here's everything I think, and I want to tell it to you, I want to talk at you, that isn't a very fun reading experience, and you as a reader don't want it. So I just try to put myself in the reader's shoes. But I'm also a literary agent. And so you would think that after 20 years, I could just call up a friend and be like, hi, publish my book, please. That was not what happened. I got dozens and dozens and dozens of rejections to all my books. And I had a real dark night of the soul when my adult novel didn't sell, because here I am. I have the fancy degrees. I know everybody in publishing. I have done this and that. I have a fancy agent. And why is this not working? And I was like, well, maybe I'm not that good of a writer. Maybe that's just true. And that was a hard pill to swallow. And then I was like, I might never get a book deal. And I recognize my like ego and privilege and all this kind of things and thinking that, but that feeling also made me really mad, and not mad at publishing, because I can't make them do anything. Even for my own clients, I can't make anybody buy a book. But I wasn't going to be the reason I didn't publish a book. So I had to write another one. And that's how I think I got this one done, after getting so many rejections for all of my previous books over about 8 years. So I hope that this book gives you that kind of inspiration, and the information to do the thing that you want to do. And remember, publishing is a retail industry. It is a business that's trying to make money, even with libraries. Like, publishers sell books to libraries, license books to libraries, and they are the wonderful repositories of these books that you can have access to. But it's a lot of capitalism, and it's not great. And you have to separate yourself a little bit from that too, that when your book is rejected, you're not getting rejected. It's just your book. So I've had like 5 or 6 books rejected, and they didn't reject me. I'm still here. So I'll cap my pontificating on that, and I would be happy to answer some questions. Simone and Casper, do you want to point them out to me? Do you want me to read them? What did we decide?
No, thank you. So we can read them out loud, so that way everyone's on the same page. So somebody said cute glasses in the
Thank you.
chat. And another person also said that the title of your children's book, Pay Attention to Me, is a perfect title for an 8-year-old journey. So that's nice.
I'll interrupt 1 second, but the funny thing was is that that whole picture book came out of me thinking of the title Bright Lights Big Kitty, and which I think is a perfect title, but the book I ended up writing didn't fit that title, so we changed it. And I still am going to write a picture book with that title one day, but Pay Attention to Me is also a wonderful title in my eyes.
So we have a question, a first question actually by Cynthia L. Cynthia says, hello, Kate. What are your thoughts creating media elements for a sci-fi novel you are currently working on to create a sort of prequel of the world, releasing these media elements episodically on social media without revealing any major characters or arcs of the novel? Would that prevent agents and publishing houses to want to take on this novel for traditional publishing?
No, that won't prevent an agent from taking something on. I think on the plus side, what it could do is build a platform for your work and for you. And if people are interested in whatever media format this is, whether it's art or video or text or whatever it is, and that gets people interested in you as a writer and the stories you could tell, because you want your platform to be you and not that singular book. Because then what do you do when you write the next book and it has a different title, or if you finish that series? So you can do those things, but make sure they're not getting in the way of actually finishing the book, because you've got to finish the book. And they can be a fun thing that you do. They can take your mind off things. They could be a reprieve from plugging away the keyboard, but it would not be an essential element to me as an agent. It would be a bonus element. So parse out your time wisely according to that.
Thank you. So yeah, keep those questions coming in the chat. You can also raise your hand if you'd like to ask your question directly. So here's a question from Susan, who writes, how should the query letter for a nonfiction book begin? Should the first sentence include word count, audience, and brief description, or should it be a sentence from the text that grabs the agent's attention?
There's no one way to do it. Every book, every query is going to be different. And I, as an agent, don't necessarily care how you start it. There isn't a single formula I'm looking for. In the book, I do give a kind of formula because I think that people need a path, a roadmap. But you can do it any way you think will grab the agent's attention. But remember, we're reading hundreds, if not thousands, of queries a month. And we want the information as, yes, quickly, but as easily. Don't make us dig for it. So I think it's very helpful for a query to start with title, word count, and genre. And it doesn't have to be, it can just say, hi, my romance novel, And They Lived Happily Ever After, is complete at 80,000 words. I can't wait for you to tell you more. And then and I know that's fiction and you're asking about nonfiction, but the same thing can be true. Hi, my 50,000 word novel about anteaters is complete. I can't wait to tell you more. Anteaters are fascinating. Whatever it is. I'm going to make up the most ridiculous examples tonight. But I just need to know if I represent that genre, because sometimes I get things I don't represent. And like what we're working with. What would you see on the title of the book, on the cover of the book, so that I can have a context for it?
Hey, thank you. And we have another question. When do you know it's time to move on from trying to get your book published? And they say, I have been reaching out to agents for only a month, but has been a little disheartening. Not sure what kind of timeline to set for myself.
A month is nothing. A month is a nanosecond. I, as an agent, like I did a kind of a recap of my year about what I sent out and what I sold and what I didn't. And I've had books on submission with editors from me, an agent, for more than a year. And that is unusual. I mean, most of my books don't take a year, but sometimes that happens. And I am talking to an author who queried me in my query pile a year ago. And we started talking about this book. She sent me the full manuscript maybe 6 months ago. And so things take forever in publishing, and no one is watching the clock but you. I don't remember when you sent me that query. I don't even see it until I open my query box. No one is watching the clock but you. So just stay as patient as possible, and you don't give up after a month, and write something else to distract you. Like write fan fiction, like write 50 picture books, do whatever it is that you want to do to distract you while agents work to get caught up.
So we have a question from Pamela, and they ask, can you tell us what types of books ring your bell to sell?
Yeah, I can tell you. And yeah, so it isn't one type of book. I can't say. I really like Regency romances set in France in 1842 or whatever it is. Please don't correct me if that's not the Regency period. I like a book that I can define the reader, like I was talking about with my book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. When I'm reading a submission or a query letter, when I start to think, oh, a person who likes this book would really like that book, and not in a, oh, if it's going to be as big as Harry Potter kind of way, but just as a way to say, if I knew my friend liked books about anteaters, I would give them this book about emus because I think they would like it. And it's really just like, how are we going to get people in a bookstore or a library to pick up this book? And so when I can start defining that in my head, and then when I can start thinking of the editors that would buy that book, that's when I know I've got something I can pay attention to. But that information is not useful to you, the writer, at all, because you don't, that could be so many books. So what you are looking for is that conversation with the reader, that you can see how your book fits into the market or into the genre because you've read other books in that genre. And you'd be like, yeah, people who read Emily Henry are going to like my book, not because they're all set in Maine or wherever her books are set, but because it's fun and heartfelt and emotional. And you'll know that because you've probably read some of those books because you're a reader of that genre. So I think that's one place to start. But there aren't these things like, well, okay, it has to be, less than 100,000 words, or, be in the first person, or any of those kind of things. That's not what I'm looking for when I read a query. I'm looking for something that I can define the reader who would go out and buy it. And I know that sounds like the very crass capitalism answer, but that's the part of my job. And your job is to write something wonderful that I can do that with. So write what you want.
Thank you. And I guess Steve.
Sorry, Casper.
Sorry. Steve has a comment. No, it's my fault. Steve has a comment. I guess it's about rejection. And Steve says, thanks for your book and this pep talk. And Steve says, FYI, I'd rather be rejected personally than have my book rejected. So what would you tell Steve?
You're stronger than I am. Boy. I can put my book over there. I am not my book. There's a lot of me in my book, in all my books, but no, there are plenty of books in this world that I don't like, but that doesn't mean they're a bad book. So that's the same thing. A book I reject as an agent isn't a bad book. It's a book I can't sell.
Okay, so we have a question from Jennifer, and Jennifer asks, what advice can you provide about publishing a nonfiction book, a reference book?
So reference is a really interesting and specific area of publishing that's usually done by university presses or specialty presses, or educational presses, or like Oxford University Press does the Oxford Dictionary, which my sister was the editor of, I'll have to say, but the Oxford American Dictionary. So if you are working on a very specific reference text, then you'll want to find publishers that publish in that area. If it's biomedical, or if it's, astronomical, or I whatever. I can't even think of it. But if you are an expert because you to the point where you can write a reference text, then you've probably read a lot of books, and you should go look and see who those publishers are. And you probably don't need an agent for that. If it is a university press or an educational press. If it's a light, fun reference book, like 57 cocktails with olives in them or something like that, then you would go look and see other books like that are like maybe cookbooks and cocktail books, and then you go and see the agents who represent those and query those books. But the number one thing for a nonfiction book for the trade audience, for like a cookbook or like a knitting book or whatever, is platform, unfortunately, because the way we buy nonfiction books as readers is we go into the library or store and you say, hey, I want a knitting book. I want to make socks. And you're going to go look at the socks, the knitting section, and you're going to pick up 2 books about socks. And you're going to be like, oh, wait, I read this person's blog. I know that I know them. I've heard of them. And then here's a very similar book. You're going to take the one that you know, or you're going to take the one that has the institutional credit that like, oh, this is from the National Needle Arts Association. I've heard of them. I think I'll pick that one. Or this is Good Housekeeping, or this is, Martha Stewart, or whatever it is. And so that while you don't have to be a brand as big as Martha Stewart, you do have to have some name recognition with your readers if you're writing in nonfiction outside of memoir, on most other topics, except for educational stuff.
Thank you. And we have a question, and they say, Abigail, what is your advice for a writer who feels very passionately about writing on a certain topic, but also feels like it is not currently a trendy or popular subject?
Well, the good news is that the things that are popular right now were written 3 or 4 years ago. And because that's how long it takes. So the market will change. And so right now, all we're talking about is vampires, and you're not writing about vampires. Well, guess what? It's going to change in about 6 or 8 months. And vampires might be the thing. The problem is that you can't predict that. And so there's always the chance that no one will want to read about the thing you were passionate about. But that is just true all the time for everybody forever. Nobody really wants to talk to me about college cheerleading, even though I like it. So you then will find the niche, you will find your people, and it may be in a venue that is a traditional publisher, or it may not be. And so you have to wait and see and keep doing the thing that you're passionate about, because if you don't do the thing that you're passionate about, you're guaranteed to be sad about it. But if you do the thing you're passionate about, you still have the chance that it could reach the next success point that you're thinking of.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Jocelyn, and Jocelyn says, I self-published my book. How do you feel about going that route instead?
Self-publishing is great. I don't specifically talk about self-publishing in my book because I am not an expert in it. I have worked in traditional publishing for 20 years, but I'm obviously aware of it. I have friends who've done it. I talk to writers who do it all the time. I think it's great. You are doing all the work and you have all the control, and that's the payoff, or that's the trade-off. Some people don't want to do all the work, all the editing, all of the marketing, all of the design, and that actually costs you money because you probably don't have all of the skills to copy edit your own work. Please hire a copy editor. And you may be an artist good enough to make a book cover, but probably not. So you have to have funds to invest in that, and a lot of us don't have that. But if you have the ability and the time and resources to do it, then you get all the rewards. The problem is that not all books are suited for self-publishing, because those readers don't always look for self-published books in that area. So there's a big self-publishing market in romance, in science fiction and fantasy, and in horror, and what else? A lot of the big genres, and less in children's picture books, because the parents who are buying picture books don't go to Kindle Unlimited to look for a picture book. We go to a bookstore or library. So you have to consider where the reader you want to reach most often buys that genre. And you probably will have a good idea of that because you are that purchaser or reader too. So that's the limit I see. But if you want to do all the work, you'll get all the rewards with self-publishing.
Yeah, thank you. I guess the next question's kind of similar. Aisha says, first, I want to thank you for being vulnerable about the books you wrote and how they did. It's a tough pill to swallow since the amount of work that goes into a book is only truly understood by other authors. And Aisha continues, so if a book isn't getting published the traditional route, I'm also wondering how you feel about the self-publishing route, or is it too risky?
It's not too risky, but you have to you have to decide if that's your goal. And what do you want out of the experience? If you want to hold a copy of your book in your hand, then you can self-publish it, because that will happen. You can buy the book, you can have it, you can design, do all the things, and they will mail you a copy. It won't be a hardcover, and it won't, but it'll exist and you can have it. And you can, excuse me, you can send people a link to buy it through certain venues. It won't be in Barnes & Noble, because Barnes & Noble will not, it's not that they don't carry self-published books, it's that every single store would have to decide to do it. You just can't like globally apply to be in Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, Books A Million, that still exists, I always forget about, and indies. You could go to your local indie and say, hi, will you stock my book? And they'll say, yes, we'll buy it on consignment, which means you pay for that. And then they give you the money back as people buy it. Kind of like when you sell clothes to a consignment store. Well, not exactly, but anyway. And it probably won't be in the library. I don't know if QPL does that, if they'll take self-published books, but you would not be like nationwide in library systems, because libraries don't buy the books nationwide. They're by library system by library system. So if your goal is to get into a bookstore, then self-publishing will not get you there. Self-publishing will also not necessarily get you discovered. It's not that agents are just trolling around every single little book that's ever been self-published looking for that gem. The books that get interest from agents are the ones that sell really well. And it's just because how else do we know about it? We don't have time to like go search through for a needle in a haystack. So you have to ask yourself what you want out of it. And if self-publishing will get you that, then that's great. If traditional publishing will do it, wait. You don't have to self-publish it just because you wrote it, because maybe one day, maybe it'll be your second book. I don't know, but you can't undo it.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a comment from Steve, and Steve says, to what extent does the author's background matter? I sometimes feel like it's not a great time to be a white male author.
I don't, from my personal viewpoint, that's not true. I think it's been fine to be a white male author for decades and decades and decades. I think you might be asking about the efforts in publishing to promote works by people of color and minorities and marginalized identities. It's usually, that's to right a lot of wrongs that publishing has done for decades and 100 years. But no one is going, oh, I have two amazing books. They're the same level of amazing. One's by a person of color, one's by a white dude. Well, we'll take the person of color. That's not how that's not how it works. Often I do not know the identity markers of anybody unless they tell me in a query letter. So I'm sorry that it feels like that right now, but it's pretty much hard for everybody.
Thank you. And we have Auburn, who asks, can you share some resources, places for authors to find an agent that might be a good match?
Sure. What you'll do is you'll look for those agent names and then you send them a query letter. There isn't like a dating service, and any app or whatever that's like promising you that, don't give them your money. I like, for places to research agents, I like publishersmarketplace.com, which has a deals section, which you can look and you can type in vampires and you can see every vampire book that was reported to this website over a period of time. Or you can look up fantasy novels and see all the agents who have sold a fantasy novel in X period of time. It is a subscription website. I think you can get like a month pass for like $10 or something like that. I don't know if libraries have subscriptions to Publishers Marketplace, but it would be a very good idea. But you could check at your local library. And you start making what I call the big messy list. So I like Publishers Marketplace. There's Query Tracker, which is where I read my queries. They also have a lot of agent information. There is the American Association of Literary Agents, the AALA, and that is one of our governing body. And if you're a member of the AALA, then you have been vetted. You're not what we call a schmagent, like a scammer. So those are trustworthy names. And then you go to the library and bookstore and you look at your genre and you look in the back of the book and you say, oh, thanks to Michael Barrett. Oh, wait, my book is like Kate's book. That's Kate's agent. Oh, I'm going to write his name down. And you get a big messy list, and then you go back to the internet and you research those individual agents on their own websites to see if they still represent a book like yours. And then you send out a bunch of query letters, and it's a very long, annoying process, and we're sorry, but there's no other way to do it. Per the what every agent needs something different. Well, everybody makes a decision differently, and this is the system we have. So sorry, it's annoying. And there's a whole chapter on that in the book.
So we have Jennifer asking, what book genres do you represent?
Let me look at my shelves as I do this. So I represent, for adults, I represent science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I like basically all stripes. I really like spaceship books. I'm a huge Star Trek fan, so I really like a space opera. I like historical fiction of all stripes too. I'm kind of good on books about World War II. We got a lot of those, so I'd love to see other historical fiction that's not about a war. Awesome. I like more modern historical fiction. I like it from, I'd say 19th century on, 1800s, 1900s. And well, if it's modern, it wouldn't be historical fiction. And I also do literary fiction, commercial fiction. I represent a large number of trans and non-binary clients just by chance. So they're a very safe and friendly home with me. And it's easier to say what I don't do in fiction: mysteries, thrillers, suspense. And if your main character is a detective or a cop or an FBI agent or somebody in a uniform, it's not for me. Those are just not the books that I gravitate towards. There are many agents who do. And as an agent, you just have to make a choice because you can't represent everything. For kids, I do picture books, YA, middle grade, and kids nonfiction. I really love kids nonfiction about anything. Adult nonfiction, I do humor, internet stuff, memoir. I like sports. I like the space program. And you can all find this also on the internet on moreheimliterary.com and on Query Tracker.
Thank you. And we have a question in the Q&A actually, and they ask from Erin, how many queries do you recommend sending out at once? Is like 10 queries out okay? Is there a negative side to having too many query letters out at once?
No, there's no specific perfect number. You kind of, as a person, only have so much time to actually send your query. So if you can send 10 in the evening and then 10 the next day, like that's totally fine. What you don't want to do is like send out one a day for 30 days or whatever number of days, because the first person you send it to will have had the book for 30 days, and the last person will have it for 1 day. And if the first person reads it and says, wow, this is really great, then that person who got it yesterday has only had it for 24 hours and hasn't had a chance to even look at it. And you're kind of giving them a disadvantage. It's not your job to worry about my advantage. Honestly, it's my job to stay on top of my queries, but I suggest sending it what you want to send out in a concentrated time period, a week maybe, and then send those out and be done with them and wait for things to come back. 10 is probably too few for just one submission. 150 is too many. It will really vary genre by genre because there are some genres like picture books where there are lots of agents, and then other genres like serious science where there are fewer agents to submit to.
Okay, great. Sarah, should I be done with a book before sending out a submission?
1000%. If you're writing a novel. When you're writing fiction, it has to be completely done. No partial manuscripts. Be completely done. Edited as much as you can. Whatever you need to do, done. Not done goes to the printer, but done as far as you, a writer, can do. If you're writing nonfiction, you'll write a proposal, which is much shorter, which includes like 2 to 3 sample chapters, depending on the book. And if you're writing a memoir, it can go either way. It really depends on the book. Some people have to write the whole memoir to figure out what they want to say, and some people can write it in a proposal. So you get to make that call. If you've written a picture book, you write the whole thing. And if you're writing a graphic novel, you want at least 10 fully colored, inked, and lettered pages and a full synopsis. You can have the script too. That is great. But the colored and inked pages are really important if you're drawing it. If you're not drawing it, then just the script.
Okay, great. And then we have a question from Cynthia. Cynthia says, if you are accepting queries via Query Manager, and if we are submitting to you and multiple agents, should we email you directly if we get a request for the full manuscript from another agent before you've gotten to it? Or
no.
So it's a
Sorry. Go ahead.
Or would we need to reach out again via Query Manager? So that's it.
So if an agent was working with Query Manager, communicate through Query Manager. That's why we have it, because our inboxes are a mess and this keeps it all in one place. I don't think you ever need to tell an agent somebody gave you a full manuscript request. I think that's a new thing. It's not bad if you do, but I personally don't pay much attention to it. It doesn't make me jump faster just because someone requested a full, because people request fulls for different reasons, not because they're right on the cusp of giving an offer representation. That means they're interested in it, but I don't know. Me and my friend Jim McCarthy, who's another fantastic, amazing agent, we request different ways. So what he does is not the same as what I do. And when you get an offer representation, reach out and do it through Query Manager if that's where you sent the query.
Thank you. Dan writes, in your experience, is making politics a major plot point in a novel or negative in the current environment? I'm currently shopping around a sci-fi thriller that has a leftist utopian bent, and I'm getting a distinct feeling that the inclusion of politics is making agents wary.
Agents are not worried about being retaliated against by the government for books. I'm not. I don't think they're paying any attention to me, maybe me personally, but also my colleagues. Obviously, there is a lot of politics in books, and obviously the current administration is wild, but we still have the First Amendment, so we can still talk about whatever we want to talk about, mostly. Individual agents have different feelings about politics in their books, and that doesn't mean, oh, I am this way and I only represent books that reflect my interests. Like, I personally don't like political satire. So if someone is writing a book about President Grump, I don't want to read that. That's not my taste. It's not my genre. It's not my expertise as an agent. So I would pass. But other people would like that. So do it if you want. I think a lot of science fiction and fantasy is inherently political, but I wouldn't look at it and be like, I'm worried this is too lefty. I don't know that that somebody would publish it. I'm not really thinking about that. I'm thinking about, does this make sense in the world? Is it captivating? Is it compelling? Do I want to finish it? Those are the questions I ask, not is somebody going to be mad at me and the government for doing this book or retaliate against Penguin Random House or whoever. That's not what we're worried about now.
Okay. We have a thank you from Pamela Ross. She said this is great information. We have a question from Alvi. They ask, if you had to boil down the steps to go from an idea of a book, getting into an agent's hands, what would be those steps, one? And have things changed now in the age of the internet?
So all of those steps are right here. I could not tell you in 5 seconds. You have to write a book and edit a book, and I couldn't possibly tell you in one answer. And it will be different for different genres. So check out the book from your local library and give it a read, and that will tell you some things that you want to know. And things have changed from the internet. One of the biggest changes in our internet world is that there are fewer magazines and newspapers, and that's where we used to read a lot about books, and now those things are gone. And so it's harder to get the word out about books. So then it is harder to sell them to the reader. And that's what we're grappling with now. I'm not worried about ebooks. Ebooks are great. Everybody loves them. They're not killing paper books. I'm not that worried about piracy. It happens, but nobody really wants to read that way. The internet changes how we communicate, but books are a perfect technology. They're never going to die. That's my opinion.
Thank you. And we do have less than 10 minutes. So I guess we'll be winding up soon. Aisha does have a question about AI. And Aisha asks, how do you feel about AI used for query letters and I guess other uses as well?
I absolutely hate it. I recommend 1000% that you do not have AI touch your book in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that it is helpful. I understand that it can be helpful for certain authors in certain capacities, but generative AI, where it is giving you sentences, I think is not good. And I can tell, I feel like I can tell the query letters written by AI, mostly because the people leave the prompts still in. That happens a lot. Or the brackets that says put agent's name in here or whatever, that happens a lot. And so that is an instant rejection. So don't use AI to write your query. If you need it to look at an example, that is fine. There's lots of examples on my newsletter. A friend and agent, Eric Smith, offers a lot of free example query letters. So they're out there. I'm a hater. I'm sorry to say, I don't use AI. So I suggest you not do it either.
Okay, we have Michael asking, do you give any weight to an author's social media following? And are there platforms that are more meaningful from your POV point of view?
For nonfiction, it's very important depending on the genre. So if your primary audience is an audience that would generally be on social media, and that's a way you could get to them to tell them, hey, I have a book, or come listen to me talk or whatever, then that's very useful. If your audience is not on social media because they're 2 years old or because from any other reasons, then it's not as vital, and you can have a platform in a lot of different ways. I have a whole bunch of stuff about platform on my newsletter and in the book. And the platform is important to the people who are on it. So if you're in parenting or fitness or cooking or fashion or something like that, then you probably want to be on Instagram. If you're writing funny quips or political stuff or dealing mostly with words, then you want to be on Threads or Blue Sky, or I guess Twitter, but we've all kind of abandoned Twitter. So it really depends on the genre you're working in. It is hard to, it's hard in fiction. And it's not as necessary. It's great if an author has it, but it's not as necessary.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask you a question that we usually ask all authors. And, book banning is a reality that's taking place in American libraries all over the country. What is your stance about book banning?
It's horrible. They're dumb. What are they doing? This is ridiculous. I can't understand any of it. I can't understand it. I'm outraged and gobsmacked most of the time. And that if you think that librarians are out to ruin kids or I can't, I'm mostly speechless about it. And I think anybody should read whatever they want. And if my kid, who was in here a little earlier, wants to come and read something that I think is not that appropriate for them, I'll just talk to them because they're my kid. And one of the rites of passage for a kid is reading Stephen King too early. Like every kid does that. You have to, and even romance novels. Okay, I won't. Well, let's answer other questions, but boo, book banning.
Thank you for your support. Pamela asks, does your agency make offers by committee or is it up to the individual agent to take on a client?
It's individual and in my agency. Some agencies are different. But we're very individual here, and we will talk about something yesterday I sat down with my colleague and we both talked about the new thing we were reading and got each other's opinions, but no, it's not everybody votes yes for a new client.
Thanks. And I think I actually skipped a comment, and this comment is from Jocelyn, and Jocelyn writes, as a follow-up, I just wanted to say that self-publishing was one of my greatest personal development experiences, and I was honored when Queens Public Library, that's us, put my book on their shelf for circulation. That meant a lot and was enough validation for me. Also, they recommend Ingram Sparks, and Barnes & Noble's carried it for a year.
That's wonderful. That's so great.
Yay, congratulations. So we are rounding up and wrapping up. And if I so may,
well,
what?
I'm sorry. I see one more question I'd really love to answer. That's like 3 seconds, but from Leah.
Oh, yes. I'm curious as a reader, how many books do you think you read in a year?
I know exactly how many books I read a year because I keep a spreadsheet and I really love spreadsheets. And last year I read 100 books and that was too many. And I really I rushed to the finish line. And I think this year I'm at like 68. And every year at the end of the year or early in the year, I do a whole post on my newsletter and I make charts and graphs about all the books that I read. And it makes me very happy. And it will be free for everybody to read. So you can look there at agentsofbooks.com in the next couple weeks.
So Kate, you said you wanted to be a writer since you were 8 years old. What would present Kate now tell 8-year-old Kate?
Write more. It's been so many years not writing. And sometimes I couldn't write because I was in my 20s and trying to pay the rent and building a career and things like that. And then when I had a kid and, so sometimes it's real feast or famine, but you don't get a book published unless you write one. So you could just write one anytime you want. And the more you write, the better you get at it.
That's so good. And I also love when you said focus on feelings. That is, that sort of touched a little soft spot. Could you elaborate a little more on what you meant by that?
Yeah. Writing is a really lonely experience. We do it by ourselves or, in little groups, but here we are in our little keyboards and we're typing and we never see our art reacted to. We're not an actor on the stage and we're not in the back of the gallery seeing our paintings being seen. So you feel very distanced both from you and then maybe other writers because you feel like you're in competition and all that stuff. And when and if you get a community of writers, you will find out everybody feels exactly the same way, regardless of how many times they have been published and how many books they've sold. And I have incredibly famous writer friends who are like, do you think anyone's going to like my book? And I'm like, you won the big prize. Like, shut up. You have a movie. And so everybody feels this way, but nobody knows everybody else feels this way. And so that's what I want to share with writers is that yeah, I've been there. Somebody else has been there. You're going to be there again. It's normal. You're fine. It'll pass.
Yeah, and speaking of movies, is your book going to be turned into a movie? And can me and Simone be in the movie?
Yes. Actually going to be The Devil Wears Prada 3, but now it's a book publisher. So we'll just get a lot of fabulous clothes and then yell at people about books.
So awesome. That is so awesome. and I think I will speak. Well, I can't speak on behalf of everybody else, but it's so amazing that, as an agent, you know, you also was raw enough to tell us that you too were rejected as an agent. You would think like, you know, you have these links and this one and that one. So you're letting people see how real it is. And I just think that is so awesome. You're not hiding anything, you know, and it's so appreciative to see how real this is for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. That's one of my goals. That's one of my goals.
Yes. Yay. So we hit the 7 o'clock mark on the dot, and we were able to answer, hopefully, Casper, all questions asked.
Yes.
And we do appreciate our audience. We appreciate you, Kate, for coming on and taking the time out, write it through. It's awesome. Thank you so much for joining Queens Public Library. We really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was a great time. I'll come back anytime you want.
Oh, great. And so,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you, Simone. And of course, everyone here. Literary Thursday continues next Thursday, December 11th at 6, when we have Jason Diamond, author of Kaplan's Plots.
He's a friend of mine. He's great. Come see him talk.
thank you. So, and to those that are going away or you know, joining us again, we welcome you and thank you for being, you know, avid readers and taking part in our little book talk. So, have a good night,
Thank you.
everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you, Kate. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.